Great. All right. Are we all set, Jesse? Okay. Well, welcome everyone to our January meeting of Community Board 4's Social and Racial Justice Task Force. I am Katie Stokes. I'm one of the co-chairs, and I'll turn it over to my other co-chair in just a moment. Just want to give you the quick overview first. This is being live streamed this evening, and we are meeting remotely as per the Governor Hochul's order that has been continued that allows us all to meet remotely right now. With that, we do have an agenda that's been distributed and is available on our Community Board 4's website. But first, I'll turn it over to Viren, my co-chair.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm one of the co-chairs, Viren Brambers is my name. I'm happy to have Lorraine join us today. And Katie, I'm going to let you introduce Lorraine.
Okay. Well, we're actually very proud on our community board of the support in the past for Midtown Community Court, and it has been closed, and it's actually been raised in a variety of different committees on Community Board 4 about the importance of it reopening. And we also heard at our full board meeting recently that there is a lot of support from Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine's office and other of our local electeds for the reopening. And I know that we're also very fortunate at our next full board meeting to have Manhattan DA Bragg coming to speak to us, and that this is an issue that we want to address with him as well. And we want to just have a better understanding for our task force of the history of the community court and frankly of the demographics of who is served, and for those who have been served in the past, what the demographics are, but also for those who would be served right now, except that it's not open. How are they being served? How are our community members being served in that way? So we definitely have some questions that we would like to have addressed, and we have here to help address those questions. Lauren, how do I say your last name? Let's admit.
Totally fine. Caratolo.
Caratolo, oh, that's good. From Midtown Community Court. So if you can give a little introduction and history about yourself, and then start with sort of a quick overview for everyone of Midtown Community Court and then where we stand right now, and that information, that would be great. So over to you, Lauren.
Sure, great. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm very, very grateful to Community Board 4 for all of the support that you have shown Midtown Community Court over the years, and especially in the last few weeks. At every single meeting I'm in, I hear somebody advocating for Midtown to be reopened. So we're all really grateful to you for that. I'm Lauren Caratolo. I have been the project director of Midtown Community Court for the last 2 years and change now. I previously was a public defender with the Legal Aid Society in Queens. So I came into this role from that position. So my background is as an attorney. And Midtown Community Court is a super special place, and it was envisioned back in the early 90s, 1993 to be exact, and open as a way to really try to figure out and move away from the status quo, of how cases, mostly low-level misdemeanors and violations, were being processed in the criminal justice system. So recognizing that, we need to really address what the underlying issues are that bring people into the system, especially on these low-level offenses, so that we can prevent recidivism, and really just meet people where they're at in terms of the services that they need. And so Midtown was really successful early on in doing that and diverting cases that were these low-level misdemeanors and violations from a few different precincts. It started as a pilot, as everything does, with a few different precincts in the Midtown area, and now we're up to 6 precincts in and around Midtown. So we partner directly with those 6 precincts. In normal non-COVID times, what that means is somebody gets arrested for a misdemeanor that doesn't allege any sort of assault. So we're talking about petty larcenies, criminal possession of a controlled substance, cases like that. And those cases then get adjourned to Midtown Community Court for arraignment. So somebody would receive a desk appearance ticket from one of our partner precincts. That case would get adjourned directly into Midtown Community Court. And then on the date of arraignment, our resource coordinator would work directly with those individuals to do an assessment. So figure out what needs that person might have. They would work with the district attorney's office and the legal aid attorney on site who are assigned to Midtown Community Court to sort of recommend a path forward, whether it's a sessions model, and if it's or I should say, they determine how many sessions might most benefit the individual and what those sessions might consist of. So a lot of the time it would be individual counseling sessions, or we have a number of alternative to incarceration groups that we run. So a lot of harm reduction groups, and know your rights group that we just started. For younger adults, we have a building healthy relationships group, which we found was overwhelmingly necessary for young adults coming through the system on these cases. So that's one aspect of
All
it.
right, Lauren, what was it called? It was like
Know Your Rights.
No, the one after that, just about sort of self-esteem, or what did you just say?
Building healthy relationships.
Building healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And I'm happy to send over our full list of alternative to incarceration group programming that we run. Another program that we have at Midtown Community Court is our Up Next Fatherhood program, where we work with folks who are non-custodial fathers who are trying to reconnect with their children. Maybe they have a pending family court case, or perhaps they were recently incarcerated and they're coming out and need some additional support. We do workforce development, things like that. So that program, the Up Next program, serves as both an alternative to incarceration option, also a reentry option, but and just like a standalone program. So anyone who is a non-custodial father, 18 or over, could participate in this program. So I can also send you a lot of literature on Up Next, along with some media stuff that's been posted about Up Next. So yeah, the bulk of our work and the bread and butter of Midtown Community Court has historically been the alternative to incarceration programming. Because of the pandemic, our court part for a while, and you might already know this, but Midtown Community Court was used for people who had COVID-19, and so they were using it as an arraignment part for a little bit at the beginning of the pandemic. And then they moved all of those operations over to our sister project in Red Hook. And now we're back in Midtown Community Court, our staff is, but we're not yet operational from a court perspective. So what that means is we have a downtown court part that's a virtual court part that operates one day a week, every Friday morning. Sometimes it goes into the afternoon, but usually it's in the morning, where our resource coordinator and our clinical team are all on this Zoom. I guess they use Teams now, but essentially it's like Zoom. And they're all inside of this virtual courtroom, and clients are appearing virtually. And we now have an on-site presence at Midtown Community Court, so that if anyone can't access the virtual court space, they could come to Midtown to appear virtually, and we have on-site folks who are setting people up for that. During the pandemic, we really thought about what does our community need? We know that the court is shut down operationally, but what could we do to really work with the community and address some of the issues that you all, point to in all of your meetings? We all know that the pandemic really displaced people. It exacerbated a lot of folks who already had pre-existing mental health conditions and illness and substance use issues. I mean, we know that overdose deaths went through the roof across the country and especially in New York. And so we were approached actually by Times Square Alliance, who said, can the court come up with a way of addressing these quality of life issues that we're seeing that doesn't necessarily involve the police? So, can we meet people where they are in the community, assess their needs, try to link them to services as a way of diverting people away from the criminal justice system and really into the services that they actually need? And so we partnered with Breaking Ground and Fountain House and came up with this idea called Community First. And so we have a team of community navigators who go out every single day, Monday to Friday, into the Midtown community, sort of focused in the Times Square catchment area for this pilot year that we're in. And they go out and build trusting relationships with folks who are unhoused. And they really figure out, what is causing someone to be unhoused? How can we sort of, meet them in the community, give them what they need by way of shirts, blankets, shoes, whatever we can sort of provide in the immediate sense to start building a trusting relationship with people, so that over time, after repeatedly showing up for them, perhaps they will engage with Breaking Ground and get into housing, or maybe they will become a member of Fountain House and be able to connect to psychiatric and other mental health care, or maybe they'll meet with one of our clinicians for individual counseling sessions, do a harm reduction group. So we're really trying to build that process out. And I think the next iteration of this is figuring out how do we partner with the community members in doing that outreach. All of you come home at the end of the day, you are walking home from the subway station. Maybe people who frequent certain areas or are sleeping in certain areas, and you can let us know about that individual. And then our team can go out and start doing the work of building a relationship with that individual. And really, over time, we're finding that people are more and more willing to not only come to Midtown Community Court in search of support from our community navigators, but also getting into Fountain House as members, engaging in mental health services. We had a number of people already who Breaking Ground were able to place into housing, which has just been great. We also were able to get some people linked to jobs. And another aspect of this is, are there local businesses who would partner with us to start hiring people if we can do the workforce development part of that with some folks who are, unfortunately unhoused, but might have a very skill set and be ready to work. So these are sort of the things that we're working on that are more upstream, away from the criminal justice system, and really trying to get into the community before somebody interacts with the system. We've also had a number of people who we've encountered who had open criminal court cases and just had warrants pending. And so our navigators actually went down to downtown criminal court with those individuals to help them vacate their warrants and resolve those issues. So we're really, we've put a lot of effort into building out this model. And it's something that I think we'll be talking to Eric Botcher about this, and as well, Gail Brewer has been heavily involved in these initiatives. So, we're trying to figure out how do we get longer term funding for programs like Community First. which I think are super beneficial and preventative, right? We don't really want, I know we all are on the same page in that we want people to get access to the services they need in order to prevent crime from happening in the first place. So, and also being able to access the MTA system and local hubs like Port Authority and things like that are super, I think, instrumental to our navigators. We think that the success of the program is really in the fact that these are credible messengers. So our community navigators are people who have personally experienced homelessness, substance use issue, mental health issues, and they are our staff who are going out as credible messengers and really relating to people by leveraging those lived experiences and shared experiences. And that model works. And because Midtown has such strong relationships with community-based partners like Housing Works, CUCS Connects, which is on site. They've been on site at Midtown for a few months now. Then we have Encore, we have Ryan, Chelsea, Clinton, Fountain House, of course, and Breaking Ground, to all act as direct referrals. Anytime someone's ready for something, we're ready to connect them to those services. So that's really the beautiful thing about working this into a community court context, because it's really, we've had decades of building those really instrumental relationships. So, and then we also, I'm talking so much, by the way, anyone can interrupt me anytime.
Can I ask you a quick question, Lauren?
Sure,
Thank you thank you for the invitation. How is your staff structured? In other words, let's say you have 10 staff members. How is the work divvied up and who does what?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a number of different teams under the umbrella of Midtown Community Court. So we have our intake and clinic team, who are really, our social workers, case managers. We have a peer navigator. Soon we will be also able to tap on a consulting psychiatrist, because we are really exploring what a mental health court part would look like at Midtown Community Court. So that's, and we have a resource coordinator who does the job of really doing these, initial assessments and recommendations to the court. So that's the clinic and intake team. Then we have a project reset team. Actually, right now, we call them the Diversion and Transformative Initiatives team, because they not only oversee Project Reset, which is a pre-arraignment diversion model that's been around for a number of years now, that really tries to divert misdemeanor cases away from arraignment or from being filed in court. So it's really about engaging people really quickly after an arrest and getting them into, these trauma-informed sort of deliberative dialoguing forums where they get connected to social worker, to case managers, and to people who are facilitating a discussion around, what is the impact of crime on community, and having more of a dialogue-based interaction that really diverts people away from the system as much as possible. And then we have so that's one team, and there are a few people on that team who work on a new diversion initiative and partnership that we have with Family Court. So what those cases are people, children, so 16, 17-year-olds, as young as 15-year-olds, who are charged with gun possession in Manhattan. We have been getting, most recently, we've just partnered with the law department because they're ready to sort of help try to divert those cases where it's a simple gun possession case to us to really do the work of trying to interrupt any potential violence that might come from someone possessing a gun. So really working with those young people to talk about their family situations, where they're growing up, do like in-depth sort of work with them and their families to prevent them from coming back into the system with having used a gun or et cetera. So we are really trying to build that out, and it's been like a really powerful we have a really powerful program there, I think, and we've also hired a credible messenger who does restorative groups with the young folks who are referred to us and really talk about the impact of violence on community as well. And so they do a lot of meeting with the case manager, interactive journaling. There's a meeting with the family. So there's a lot that goes into that kind of programming. So that's our diversion and transformative initiatives team. And then we have our Up Next team that focuses just on the fatherhood work, a community engagement team, and that's made up of 3 community engagement specialists who really who do the work of not only outward facing community events for the Midtown Community Court, but also they do community service mandates for anyone in Manhattan who's referred to community service. So that would involve placemaking projects in and around Midtown. We're always looking for partners for that also. So like gardening, we do a lot of also deliberative dialoguing for community service. So they will watch a TED Talk or some sort of like podcast, something about the criminal justice system, like mass incarceration, the impact of crime on community, et cetera, and engage in deliberative dialogues as groups about those issues. And we've found and this was really started because of the pandemic, and we needed to have an alternative to in-person community service. And we found that it's been quite impactful on really helping people to be accountable to their communities and to also recognize the ways in which perhaps their community hasn't been accountable for them. And, it's a really beautiful space, and we've gotten a lot of amazing feedback from those dialogue spaces. And then we have our, who did I forget? Intake, community engagement up next. Someone's going to yell at me, and diversion and transformative initiatives. So I think that's it. So we have like a bunch of different teams doing a bunch of different sorts of work, and then everyone sort of comes together to cross collaborate when we have other kinds of initiatives. Of course, we have the Community First team that's solely made up of the credible messengers and community navigators, however you want to identify them. So yeah.
So Lauren, if I may.
Sure.
So you said that before the pandemic, basically, that you were working with 6 precincts who were sending misdemeanors sort of your way, that they, and I guess I'm just wondering, so what is happening now to the majority of those cases? Are they still being sent your way, but they're only being addressed on whatever it is, Friday mornings or something?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so right now we have Midtown Community Court has a sister project called Manhattan Justice Opportunities that's based out of downtown criminal court. And they do a lot of misdemeanor alternative to incarceration work as well for the catchment precincts, the precincts that are outside of our catchment areas, really. And then they also do felony alternative to incarceration work out of downtown criminal court. So as like sort of a way of recapturing or capturing the cases that would have otherwise gone to Midtown, what we have been able to do in the last, I want to say 6 months to maybe a little bit under a year, we've been able to get all the referrals that would have otherwise come to us from Manhattan Justice Opportunities. So essentially, like a case gets arraigned downtown, they get sentenced to Manhattan Justice Opportunities for sessions because Midtown is technically closed. They would essentially refer that case to our staff to do the services for that individual, including the intake and everything like that. Now I think there's more of that in the beginning, it was mostly all coming from Manhattan Justice Opportunities, all of our referrals. So not only just our precincts, but also because Midtown Community Court acts as the adolescent diversion part for all of Manhattan, it does mean that we can take any misdemeanor case for any person aged 18 to 23. So we've been getting a lot more of those cases referred to us too from Manhattan Justice Opportunities. There's also the possibility that, a case gets arraigned in downtown criminal court and the DA just offers, the ADA offers Midtown Community Court with sessions, and then the judge just adjourns that case onto our calendar so that every Friday, we're seeing any number of cases that might have been referred to us that way. And then we get that referral directly from our clerk in downtown criminal court.
Got it. And just as a follow-up, so your general impression, it sounds like, is that you're basically serving the same group or number of people from our community. It's just a tiny bit maybe more circuitous. But it's not like if somebody from our community is being arraigned for a misdemeanor that they're going to end up somewhere else entirely. They are likely to end up back with you guys again.
Yes, the hope is that is what's happening. Our volume is a lot lower than it typically has been in the past. I will say that. So, it might be that cases just got diverted more quickly. Like maybe there was an offer made that was accepted. A lot of different possibilities can be accounted for when it comes to evaluating why our volume might be lower right now. But I will say that the benefit of like having a case adjourned directly into Midtown Community Court for arraignment is that there isn't the sort of intermediary process that happens. Like there is something very special and unique about having a case originating out of Midtown Community Court. It's like you get arraigned, you have the same defense attorney, the same assistant district attorney, the same judge, all of whom are, educated and understand procedural justice principles. And it really like begins the process of somebody trusting the judicial system, like the criminal justice system, and really understanding that we're there for not only immediate connection to services, because all of our staff is right immediately on site to start connecting people, but also that we're a long-term asset to people. What I found astounding were the number of folks who came back, like called our social workers during the pandemic, having not had any mandates over their head, but really understanding that like this is really affecting my mental health right now. I feel like using drugs. Can you help me? And being reconnected to someone who's a resource to them it doesn't happen in downtown criminal court so much, I would say. So unless I'm missing something, but that is the unique thing about Midtown Community Court, I think, for sure.
Great. And we have some other questions too.
Yeah.
David, I saw your hand up.
Hi, thank you. I mean, I've heard of the court, but now you really explained to what it really is, and it's very impressive. Now, I was thinking more long-term social work part when you mentioned that. It just clicked in my head. I don't know why. Maybe I'm off base, but I know they've done this in India in prisons, but actually create a yoga for posture, give them yoga postures, especially males. And they found that to be very helpful. Do you have a program where you are teaching them yoga? Because I know I belong to also totally another side. I belong to a group called Out Cycling, which is gay and lesbian youth. They're at risk. They've never been I don't know if they've been in trouble, but they're financially disadvantaged. Do you have programs where you give them physical things to do? I mean, whether it's yoga or something, or the gym.
Yeah, that hasn't technically been part of what we have done, but we have in the last few weeks, actually, it's funny that you should bring it up, is we did, our clinic team just came up with another option for an alternative to incarceration group that has to do with dealing with stress and how young people can, sort of process stress and how it impacts them and perhaps even their choices, and how to mitigate stressful things through like breathing and things that are beneficial to someone, like meditation and things like that. So I will say also, I am a certified yoga instructor. And so it has also been something on my mind. I don't know if you all know this, but we were awarded a lot of capital funding from both the borough president, Gail Brewer at the time, and Senator Hoylman's office, as well as Speaker Johnson and City Council, all supported sort of updating Midtown Community Court. So our court room and all of the holding cells are going to be redone and be trauma-informed design, and include spaces where we can incorporate more on-site holistic programming like yoga, art therapy, through all of our art partners and things like that. So it is certainly part of the future of Midtown that we're going to start incorporating other mechanisms people can utilize to prevent recidivism, to get people connected to things that make them feel good and balanced and things like that, and to really be a resource for the community.
If you would like, I can't promise that it'll be successful, but I can talk to the Iyengar Institute, and maybe they would send some teachers that. I don't know how that would work, but I don't know the lineage that you got your certification in. What was your lineage? Just I know it's a digression.
I'm a vinyasa, but I wasn't planning on teaching.
Oh.
It's just a motivating factor for me to incorporate it.
But if you want, you can contact me, and I'll try to put you in touch with some of the people from the Iyengar Institute. Right now, they're just re-getting their physical space, but
great,
I mean, I just think it would be a great thing to do. That's why. And once again, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Hector, I see your hand up.
Hey, Lauren, thanks a lot. That was, I have to say, very impressive works that you guys are doing. I wasn't aware fully of what Midtown was doing. And after hearing all this, it seems very promising. And I'm glad to hear that you guys are starting to roll again. I do have a question concerning staffing. I hear all these programs and they're great, but I wonder, do you have enough people, to staff all these worthwhile jobs? I mean, it's quite an ambitious endeavor. So I'm just wondering, are you short-staffed, or are you having problems getting funding for staff?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always feel like we are short-staffed, but the staff that we do have, they are mighty and they are very passionate about the work that they do, and they love it. I mean, we have been able to hire a bunch new people, which has been great. I know we have the backing and support of government and city council and, the Office of Court Administration. So everyone wants us to not only be in the space, but to be able to do our work effectively, and have been able to support initiatives and allow us to hire new people to meet those ongoing demands and the volume demands. I sort of hope with this new administration and the new DA's office and sort of the direction in which we're probably moving is to really deal with perhaps even nonviolent felonies in the community court, and how do we get people more wraparound services who might have some higher needs. And so as we're exploring that, we may need to hire more social workers, case managers, and things like that. And when we do need that kind of support, I do know that we have a lot of folks to lean on in terms of getting additional funding. So yeah, I think anytime you're talking about the nonprofit sector and social services, we could always use more hands on deck and the funding to go with it. So it's always a little bit of a struggle, but the Center for Court Innovation, which is the operating project the organization that we all work under has a lot of credibility in this space. And we have justice centers and community courts in every borough. And so it's on everyone's radar. So anytime we do need additional funding, we know that we have the support to get that.
I do have just one more comment. I'm a veteran myself, and I attend the VA on 23rd Street, the VA Center, and they have programs during the week. And I'm sure maybe you have something similar, but they do in this day of COVID, they're forced to do a lot of workshops that are remote. And you had mentioned something about stress or the stress tolerance group.
Yeah.
And they do multiple workshops throughout the week, whether it be yoga, Tai Chi, or family concern issues, fatherhood, parenting, that kind of thing, geared toward different aspects of what the issues that some of the folks in your ballpark may end up dealing with. And they have it going regularly throughout the whole week. And basically they just remote in through Zoom or whatever, or Microsoft Meeting or whatever you folks are using, and they do it on a regular. Are you folks geared for that, or are you planning to do it, or?
That's what we have been doing. I mean, so
great.
All of our programming has been virtual this entire time, really. We're folks, when in the beginning of the pandemic, especially, and even now, we are able to provide the technology to folks who need to be connected. A person on our team went around and delivered phones to all of our participants once we had to go into shutdown mode. Now that we're back on site, even though we're reduced staff, we do allow anyone to come on site to access their services in person if necessary, if they don't have the access to technology necessary to connect otherwise. But we've actually found increase in participation, and easier access for a lot of folks who might be in the justice system and need to fulfill a mandate. They're more easily connecting in this virtual space, and simultaneously not missing a day of work for it, right? So they're calling on their break from work so that they can both engage in their counseling session or their group and then go back to work without missing a beat. So and then know that we're there as an ongoing resource to people even after they complete their mandate.
That's great. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you.
And Mike, I see you have a hand up.
Yeah, I do. Thanks. Thanks, Lauren, for coming and enlightening us about, I never had any idea how much gets done there, even though I did represent my son there many, many years ago.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Well, fortunately, it was something very, very violation type thing, as a kid, he's just a young teenager.
Yeah.
But I was amazed to see how well it went and how compassionate the judge was.
Mm-hmm.
You see? Different from 100 Center Street, where you might get anyone, as you well know, anyone on any given day, and you're not prepared for it necessarily, right?
Sure.
So instead of your client walking home, he's at Rikers on $10,000 bail or something. So, but my understanding from what you tell me is that this is essentially a city arraignment court, okay? City court.
Yes.
So you do felonies, but felony arraignments as if you were down at 100 Center Street, right?
Well, right now we don't actually do any felony work at Midtown Community Court. It is only misdemeanor violation. So mostly misdemeanors now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I misunderstood you because I was curious about that.
We don't have a felony court part. In order to do felonies, you need another clerk. There are lots of technical things that you
sure I know that Supreme Court, Supreme
exactly.
Court.
Yeah.
So what raised the issue in my head was, what are these holding cells all about?
So great question. So at one point, and I remember, a lot of these cases were all online arrests. There wasn't a robust DAT process, desk appearance ticket process, right? People were getting online arrests, coming to Midtown, and then being released essentially into programming. So at Midtown Community Court. So the holding cells were utilized pretty frequently at one point. When I joined as the project director, the holding cells hadn't been used anymore. I think there weren't online arrests happening. NYPD moved out of Midtown Community Court. And so we had just like these empty spaces. And I said, well, let's reclaim these spaces and make them into restorative spaces and design something really cool that can be productive and moving away from incarceration and towards social services.
Right.
And more
Sort of like a doctor's office sort of arrangement.
Sure.
Right? No, almost.
So yeah, that was the impetus to putting in this capital funding application. Senator Hoylman essentially funded it through state funds for us to begin the process of developing these spaces into restorative spaces for art therapy, yoga, like more holistic services. So that's something we're working on. I will say, however, that Midtown Community Court does serve as the Manhattan Emergency Court space. So like 9/11, even during COVID, they needed to use the holding cell spaces for folks who were being produced on court dates, who may have been incarcerated. So they were using the holding cell spaces for that purpose and continue to do so. And so we can't totally demolish that space. We have to sort of keep the structure in place as a holding cell, but we are remodeling it so that they will serve a dual purpose, either as a trauma-informed holding space or a space where we can, and I should say, a space where we can simultaneously do more holistic programming offerings.
But one last thought. It's nice to hear that people are coming back to you seeking help when they're agitated or distressed or whatever. Is this a 24-hour hotline sort of thing, or is it just during the weekday?
It's 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, where we operate along court hours.
Yeah, because it would be nice. I mean, a lot of these folks probably could use some help at night or on the weekends.
Yeah, what I have been working on with Link NYC is at each kiosk in the Midtown area, there's a link to access Midtown Community Court services. So all you have to do is like sort of click on there's like a social services link on Link NYC, and you click on it and it brings you to another landing page where it says Midtown Community Court, and someone can actually fill out a Google form and it gets to us. And we do have a phone number that anyone can call sort of at any time. We might not answer it until the next day, but people can leave us messages that way as well.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Viren?
Yes, Lauren, thank you. I'm quite familiar with your impressive work, the Midtown Court. I think you kind of touched upon it, but it would be good for the people in this room and beyond to hear a little more about Center for Court Innovation, the umbrella group that sort of you come under. In fact, Midtown Court initiated that entire project, so to speak, right? So if you could talk
That's
about,
right.
Yeah. So I mean, just as kind of the reason why I'm saying that is because what that umbrella group is trying to do is so much more interesting, and it has so many sort of tentacles that sort of reach out to different city agencies, different programs, and basically kind of transforming the justice system, in a remarkable way. And as an architect, we have this ethical dilemma, and I don't know if you heard about it, probably you have, that as architects, some of us refuse to design prisons because we ethically do not agree with the kind of justice system that is already in place. And these become kind of icons of perpetuating the problematic models that we follow. So can you speak about Center for Court Innovation a little bit?
Yeah, that's a beautiful introduction to the work that we do as an organization. So Midtown Community Court obviously was the first community court envisioned in 1993, and it was out of the success of Midtown Community Court that sort of started this organization, the Center for Court Innovation. And we have multiple project sites in every borough that is working to create a more effective and humane justice system. And we have a robust data team, for example, and research team that helps to launch reforms around the world. We have a technical assistance team. Our former deputy director, Natalie Reyes, she was the deputy director at Midtown for a number of years, and she is now part of the technical assistance team that operates under the umbrella of Center for Court Innovation. And they work to help other jurisdictions around the world build similar community courts, and a lot of them are really built after this model. So we have, a number of different sites in each borough that does the work that Midtown does in slightly different, in unique ways that are really reflective of the needs of the community. So Midtown Community Court looked different from other community justice centers like Red Hook Community Justice Center, Brownsville, Staten Island. So we all sort of are unique in what we offer because we're really reflecting what the community needs around us, but we're all working for the same purpose of changing the status quo of how cases get through the justice system, and really also thinking through what are upstream ways of keeping people out of the system completely. And we do that in a number of different ways too. So, I mean, we oversee a lot of different kinds of programs, and I'm happy to send you some literature on exactly what those things are. But, violence interruption, for example, we do a lot of stopping gun violence before it happens. In fact, the community first model that you're seeing about utilizing credible messengers to try to get people into housing and mental illness is modeled after our Save Our Streets model, which is about utilizing violence interrupters to stop violence before it happens in communities. So yeah, it's really admirable. Every time I go to a meeting with other project directors, I'm always floored by hearing all of the work that every operating project is doing. And it's really all sort of started because of Midtown Community Court.
Yeah, so I just have a related follow-up question. In terms of your partnerships with the city, do you have any kind of direct sort of partnerships with any agency similar to Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, for example, or housing for homeless services?
Every single agency we have a partnership with. I mean, so for Community First, the Department of Homeless Services is currently funding our one-year pilot, for example. So yeah, Department of Mental Health and Hygiene we've collaborated with. So we have points of contact sort of everywhere throughout the center. They have different relationships at the government level for sure, state, local, and et cetera.
And one last question in the same vein. You must have heard of Community Solutions and Common Ground. Have you heard of those folks?
Yes, I have.
Yes, and they're a fantastic sort of people who actually have done quite a bit of work in similar sort of areas, not exactly justice systems, so to speak. But we did a study for Brownsville a few years ago, which was actually displayed at MoMA as well. It was basically called the $1 Million Blocks. And the intent for that study was in Brownsville to identify city blocks from where a maximum number of folks were incarcerated. And the cost of incarceration was actually mapped. And we actually, believe it or not, don't fall off your chair, but we actually identified a number of blocks in Brownsville alone, which became the $1 Million blocks, because per block, the cost of incarceration was close to $1 million. And the whole argument that was presented at that point in time, which was covered by everybody, but it's a very interesting sort of topic for you guys to sort of think about. The argument was that instead of spending this money, taking folks back and forth from sort of prison system to court and, bringing them back to the community, invest that kind of money in the community so that it can begin to sort of root out the problem where it begins or before it begins. Yeah. And there's substantial data which city has, and I don't know which agency might have that, but there is substantial sort of research that does point in that direction, that actually that money is better spent if put in the right hand and spent the right way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. And Leslie, I see that you have your hand up.
Yes, I had a quick question, Lauren, and that has to do with the percentage of, you mentioned you serve the homeless as well. So if you had to look at a pie, is it 80%, 20%? Where are we now given where we are with COVID?
In terms of
Services rendered to?
services rendered to homeless population, is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
Mhm.
So that's a great question. Hard to answer that question. But I will say that for the Community First program, for example, we have, I can try to pull up the data real fast. We have reached, I think, about over 300 individual people in and around Midtown in the since the middle of July. And we've rendered about 596, I think, services to that group of people, whether it be obtaining a New York City ID, which is a headache in and of itself, or, get access to mental health care, substance use. I can get the data report for you and send it over if you're interested, because it also, we couple it with client narratives, which I think oftentimes we lose the story to the data. There are such people have such vibrant and complex individual stories, and we're dealing with not people who have just one thing happening in their lives, but multiple things happening at once. And so yeah, I would say that there's this more immediate thing of getting people food, shelter, clothing, which is something we're doing with everyone we interact with who is on the street and unhoused. And then there's the more in-depth client case management work that we're doing with folks as they're ready for it. And that would include getting things like IDs, mental health care, health, a physical examination appointment, housing specialist, financial services, and things like that. So since the pilot, and if we're just looking at Community First, since the pilot started in July, we've reached over 300 individual folks and provided around 590 something services to that population. I would say on the whole, Midtown Community Court, really the population of people that we serve is definitely the majority are people who are dealing with some intersectional issues, whether it's that they live in a community that's over policed, or they are dealing with a substance use issue, a mental health issue, or being unhoused, I should say, or being unhoused, or food insecure and things like that. That's the vast majority of our client base, I would say.
So Lauren, the reason why I asked as well is because in a number of our recent meetings, the community raised issues like some of the people that were homeless seem to have come from out of state. They're seeing more and more coming from out of state. So that's why I was asking the question, is it, and you said you would get them IDs, New York IDs, et cetera, et cetera. So that would kind of tend to lean to that these people are coming from out of state. That's
some
why
people
I'm getting
are from New York, but yeah,
they may not have. Okay.
Right. Some people are from New York, but just haven't been able to get access to that, or have lost their ID,
Okay.
And needed to be replaced. I can certainly find out based on the Community First data we have, and asking my community navigators who, whether or not they're seeing that trend as well. Certainly there is a transient population in and around Times Square, especially around Port Authority. We do see that more often than not, but there are folks who are New Yorkers through and through, right? And who were either displaced during the pandemic and found themselves in Midtown, or from other parts of the city, who come to Times Square area because they feel safe. That was a reoccurring theme that came up of it's heavily policed. I don't have, like, shelters are scary. This is where it's well lit here. I can sleep here without the threat of feeling like someone's going to attack me. Those were sort of reoccurring themes that have come up throughout this pilot program.
Thank you.
Sure.
Jesse, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to have to step off very soon. I've made Viren the co-host. Thank you again, Lauren, for making time tonight. I appreciate it. And I'm sure I will see you at another meeting very soon.
Definitely.
And Katie and Viren, I'll check in with you guys in terms of what any actions, if at all, you guys would want to take tonight on the stuff like that. Well, just highlight one thing though, and I know Katie knows, but I think Mike knows maybe too. Hector does. I'm probably half the room knows. We did write a letter. The board did write a letter in support of Midtown Community Court. So just make sure members of our board and members of the public that are here can see that on our website. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jesse.
Okay.
Bye.
Great, thanks, Jesse. And I apologize for the phone ringing in my background at the moment, but alas.
Okay.
So I've just found it so interesting. All the programs you've shared about sound so fantastic. And this is sort of a follow-up to Leslie's question. I'm actually on the board of BRC, that does a lot of these programs, right? Yeah, which is, so I know how time consuming it is and how many touches there have to be by the outreach workers, before, in order to build that sense of trust for people who are wrestling with being unhoused and so many other challenges at the same time. And yeah. Now, and one question I have about your the experience of your people who are out doing this work, as I forget who, somebody mentioned earlier, maybe it was you, Leslie, we've certainly heard on some of our other CB4 committee meetings, members of our community saying they just feel unsafe. They feel that they're being that the panhandling and other things that are happening are much more aggressive, and they don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, I think people want a phone number to call or like a place to call, like, oh, you guys are handling this, and they want to, you said earlier, like, hey, give us a call and we're happy to go out and do the outreach. But I'm wondering, I think there's often an expectation like, oh, if I call and report that there is a person here panhandling or otherwise being unhoused, that then if I call and report it, then that person won't be there tomorrow.
Right.
And that's, I assume, not your goal right away, right? And it's not the way it's going to happen. And so I wonder how do you, and how does your team sort of set expectations? Like, we're about helping these people, but it's not about getting them out of your street.
Right.
Yeah, and how do you set expectations and saying we're offering these services, but this is a whole thing that takes time and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
through conversation, honestly, we're trying to figure out ways, again, like, to partner with community in this specific way, and really an education process has to happen around, folks are dealing with a ton of it, for that person who's sleeping on the corner, that to them is their community too. Like, that's their neighborhood. That's where they feel safest. That's where they've chosen this place to stay. And I understand the community concern. I understand the fear that attaches to the unknown of things, right? And to also, what we're reading constantly and hearing about in the media, and all of these, whether false or true narratives around folks, but I have my team going out every day meeting with unhoused people, and there have been no, I mean, knock on wood, no incidents reported of anyone really becoming violent with our team in any sort of way. And where there is someone who has some emotional distress, we have been able to effectively help de-escalate and connect to emergency services when and if necessary. And it's true, I think that, you know, we are limited in that we are here 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So if somebody's encountering someone at 7 or 8, maybe by the time we get there the next day, that person will be gone. And that speaks to not like that this isn't a solution, but rather the solution needs to just be expanded. So, you know, maybe there is a way to support a 24/7 operation that mirrors this pilot that we've done. Whether or not Midtown owns that project is completely in a, you know, doesn't matter. It's that we need something like this in place in that way. Times Square Alliance has been a tremendous partner, and they have workers overnight, one of whom used to be a community navigator on the Midtown Community Court team and now is a night shift supervisor there with Times Square Alliance. And he and a few other folks there act as a liaison. So they'll let us know overnight, like send information on a new person who's come to Times Square, who's sleeping there. And then our team goes out and locates that person in the morning and starts the conversation and the trust building exercise. I did read and hear that there is a proposal that has gone out for this program called Safe Options Support Team. I don't know if you've read about it, but it was announced by the governor and mayor that sort of mirrors this model that Community First has, but it's more focused. I shouldn't say more focused, but the focus is that it will be teams of social workers, peer navigators, I think a nurse, and some other folks, case managers essentially, who will be available 24/7 in, I don't know where in Manhattan, but, you know, sort of a general call for proposals has been sent out. And I could see Community First sort of working in tandem with those teams so that, you know, because I'm sure that they'll be limited. They probably might be limited, I'm not sure, in their scope and the number of people that they hire for that kind of project. But really, what we found to be so successful about this is, you know, the trust exercise building that happens when you keep coming and reappearing for someone over and over again, to the point where eventually they're like, all right, like I'm ready. I think I'm ready. I trust you. I'm ready to go meet with that person from breaking ground and connect to services. So we're hoping to figure out where our place is in relation to that SOS program. And or whether we might just, you know, apply for that. But, you know, we're still trying to figure out strategically what makes sense for the community court and for the Center for Court Innovation on a larger scale. So yeah,
that sounds great. And you're right. I mean, it's I think we all think that the Safe Option support teams and all the groups that are out there already and who can do more of it, we clearly need more of it, you know. Support for people out on the streets. But I think it's so important to, as you said, to really communicate that this is a time-consuming process.
It is,
and that establishing the trust, nothing will happen without that, and that is not just like, oh hey, I'm going to call, and then, you know, then those people won't be on my street corner tomorrow morning. It's just not the case.
Right. And we've seen, you know, sweeps being done and, you know, but people come back, you know, it's not a solution, it's temporary. And I think everyone wants like an easy fix, but it's not an easy problem. You know, it's super complicated.
So it would be helpful, I think, for us to know how we can help you. But so what do you know that can be publicly shared of anything about sort of when sort of next steps for you, and like, when is Midtown Community Court reopening? I mean, you're already open and doing things, but
Right. We don't know. I don't know when officially we'll have our courtroom operating 5 days a week again. I know that we're sort of, that is happening. Conversations around are happening. The supervising judge, the administrative judge, I know you met with Judge Amaker quite recently. You know, the ball is moving. I don't know. I know that the court took a really big hit from a staffing perspective. I mean, once they say go, we're ready to go. Our team is on, you know, they're still doing, and they have been doing the work this whole time. So once we get the green light, and I think you've already all done such tremendous work of, you know, elevating the community court, bringing it to everyone's attention, showing your support for the work that we do, which is just huge for us and for what we're trying to achieve. And I think we have a DA right now who's really trying to strike that balance of public safety and also caring about people who are ending up in the system as a result of mental health issues and substance use issues. And really, as he's trying to strike that balance, I think that we will be able to help to further those objectives that he has, because we've been doing this work for many years. And in fact, the person who is overseeing the alternative to incarceration work on his team was a Center for Court Innovation. She was the project director at Midtown Community Court. She held multiple positions at the Center for Court Innovation. So I know she will be pushing forward in terms of bringing more cases into the community court.
great. Yeah, good. Well, I think it's been super helpful to just have you here this evening. As we know, like, we've all heard what good work you do, but for us to better understand all the different ways that you're reaching out in the community, like, it's extraordinary. So bravo you.
So much.
Absolutely. Now, let me just check. Are there any other questions? I don't see any other hands up right now. So I think that we get to say thank you to you, Lauren. And please, you know, our community sees you as a resource, and we hope that you continue to see CB4 as a resource, and let us know how we can help in any way, because it's really great work that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you and your time and interest. I mean, it's so great. I love being here. So.
All right. Okay. So thank you, Lauren, very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Lauren.
Wow. Oh, that was lovely. Now, I know we have a variety of other things to address. I actually don't have the agenda up in front of me. I can pull it up quickly. Viren, do you have it up there, or shall I just jump in even if I'm slightly out of order?
Sorry, actually, I'm on a call.
Okay.
But I'm just going to put it on. I have an ongoing emergency right now.
Oh,
but I'm just going to, that's all right. Not to worry. I'll just pull it up very quickly.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
All right.
Because I know
the next item right now on the agenda is task force discussion about equity in education.
Oh, great. All right. And this is actually just a really quick thing I just wanted to check with the rest of you about. At our full board meeting, Gail Brewer mentioned that how important she thinks it is that we check to make sure that all schools have social workers and really good after-school programs from an equity perspective. And she said that there are lots of schools that don't have that. And so it was just a question in the back of my mind after her comments: should we take some time, and if so, would we be interested in doing it, to reach out to the schools in our district to find out, do they have social workers, and do they have after-school programs? How many kids do the after-school programs serve, and is there a fee? To pull that information together for our own knowledge, but then also to be able to feed back to her and other city council members if there is funding available for social workers and after-school programs. Is that something that you guys think makes sense for our task force to look into? It was just something she mentioned. Is
I think
that
that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea.
great? So a thumbs up. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
Mike has a question. Yes, Mike?
That's my version of thumbs up.
Oh, it's your, got it.
Okay.
Okay. And then actually, and I was thinking that I'm also on ACES, on the education subcommittee, and I'm happy, I think we can sort of work together, on this, and we can mention to them that we're looking into this, and I'm happy to just do the initial pulling together the list of who to reach out to at the schools, and to try and pull that together and then bring it back to our task force. So I will even volunteer for that issue. So that was, I know, on the education piece. And then I know, hold on, let me pull up the agenda here, because there was another thing that somebody had mentioned, also at full board. Hold on, let me pull it up.
I just emailed you the agenda, so you can check your email.
Oh, awesome. Let me just pull it up that way then. Aren't you the best? Strangely. Oh, perfect. Great. Thank you, David. It's just opening here for a second. Okay. And then equity in healthcare. There was also a discussion, I think it was by Mark Levine, Manhattan Borough President, who mentioned it. But he talked about how CB4 was particularly hard hit at the beginning of this most recent variant, Omicron, and that we had several of our local officials looking at making sure that there were test sites available, trying to have some pop-up sites, that sort of thing. And I just wondered if that's something else that we should be trying to pull the data together to say, like, okay, how many test sites, not test sites, how many opportunities were there available for our district, for our people to be able to be tested? Were the lines super long? How many people could they serve each day? So again, it's the kind of thing that we can say, hey, we're not getting the right amount of service. Like, why do our people have to stand, our district have to stand in line a long time, whereas in other districts, they seem to have more mobile sites? Or from what you know from your community members, do you think that that was not so much an issue for this particular, at least recently? Do you feel like we had enough sites, or do you think we should pull that data together?
Well, I have a thing to mention.
Okay.
If it's a matter of funding, and if it's possible for us to get monies from the federal government to support it, what about the night shift buildings having medical centers in each of those building complexes, so that people in those centers could go directly for services on site rather than having to fight to get into something away from the complexes? Is there something that we could do to advocate for putting in medical centers, if you will, small community centers in those building complexes that could service those needs that you just mentioned, plus other things, of course, not just COVID, but just general health situations?
Yeah,
So
let me pipe up for a second on that one.
Yeah, sure.
And Hector, you might know
Yeah,
the
Hector would
answer
be
to
the,
this.
yeah.
Hector, you might know better than me, even though I live closer to the Hudson Guild on 26th Street. They do have the NORC there. The NORC is for the aging in place locale for folks who get services, the older people in the projects. And I just don't know. I don't recall hearing that even they were doing testing. Did you hear anything about that, Hector? Because if they weren't doing it, then we got a long road to hoe.
Yeah, the issue is that they would do these testing days where they would invite a provider to come in. And usually it was up to the TA president to make arrangements or something like that. Because I know Miguel Savito for the Fulton Houses had arranged for a provider to come in on a specific day to do testing. And that was pretty pretty decent of them to take care of. But no, yeah, we could definitely use that in these communities, because honestly, it takes someone like a Miguel Acevedo to arrange for something like that. And it shouldn't be that way. I mean, our politicians in our city should be taking care of that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, just as a side note, my son was able to run out and find all these places. City MD has multiple locations. He finagled his way in and got it done. And lo and behold, he was positive, right? Which led me to do a home test, negative, right? And I said, no, I'm sick. So I had the people come. There was a service that, if you remember, Chris LeBron spoke about. Do you remember that?
The at-home service or
The at-home service.
Mhm.
Well, I jumped on, I jumped right on it, and they came, and sure enough, I was positive, and the PCR thing. She did the rapid test. I was negative. Came back a few days later, positive. And indeed, I got the follow-up from the trace and whatever it's called, right off the bat, different from the first time. I had this a year before, the same deal. I didn't catch it that time, but my son had it. So the Trace Corps, sent us all kinds of stuff. This time, all they were telling you was they were giving you advice. It was like, it's like impossible to trace this Omicron thing.
Yeah, I think they have stopped. I think they literally.
Yeah, they just,
stopped
it's just,
yeah.
it ain't, they can't catch up to it. It's just, and it's better that I understand to look retrospectively, like, where did you catch it kind of thing,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And but anyway, so I mean, it's a different animal now. We're dealing with something different, and I don't know.
David, I see your hand is up. Oh, sorry.
I would still, I'd reach out to NYCHA, make it more of a thing that's universal, that we don't have to come to you the next time. Just do it automatically.
You mean you're saying that you would support Leslie's
Yeah.
idea of investigating, possibly supporting on-site medical centers in the NYCHA buildings?
Well, in cases like this,
Oh, like only temporary
yeah,
ones, like.
yeah, pop-up places just
Oh.
automatically done without us having to go ask
Yeah.
for it.
Now, I think, Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think your proposal was more for sort of a permanent on-site medical center in NYCHA building.
Yes, that's what I think would serve the community. Hector can best speak to this and chime in, as you think, but I was just thinking that it would be a good thing to have going down the road. We don't know what the next epidemic's going to be. And there are people in those buildings who may age out of going to certain places or may not have the facility to go to other places. Why not have a service available for them?
Yeah, well, we're gonna have.
I see Dave. Oh, sorry. I see David's hand up. Let's go to David.
I'm gonna finish off.
Oh, okay.
Last word here. We have this packed conversion happening at Fulton and Elliott houses. Okay, if you're familiar with that, it's a private. Related is coming in essence coming. So there's an opportunity there. They've opened the door to having different community spots there, healthcare centers there, all kinds of things. So, I mean, down the road, we can certainly keep it in mind, Hector, right? Keep it in mind, right?
That's a part of the proposal that the developers
It
come
is.
up with, that the 26th Street location would hopefully have a main center, medical center, and there would be a smaller satellite version at the Fulton houses, because they're both
Exactly.
development process.
Exactly. So
it's not etched in stone, it's in the works, but hopefully that will be the end product.
yeah.
And
So
I think that should be replicated through any NYCHA complex going through redevelopment. I think it should be a requirement, to be honest with you.
yeah.
Interesting. David, your hand.
Hi, thank you. I like Leslie's idea. I thinking of something a little bit within the vein, because he created the idea, maybe sort of like City MD, but obviously at the NYCHA places, maybe on a rotating basis. So every second and and fourth Tuesday, they would be at one NYCHA development. Every first Monday, they'd be at another, and third Monday, they'd be at another NYCHA development. So within the community. So let's say you went to one in your own development and you had to go back more immediate. You just go to another NYCHA development, a few minutes away. But I mean, maybe on a rotating basis.
So like a mobile van or something. Is that what
Well, it
you're
wouldn't be a
saying?
mobile van, it'd be like mobile doctors. I don't know, City MD's private, so it'd have to be, I mean, I'm assuming it'd have to be something with NYCHA. I don't know how that would, the mechanics, the logistics of that would be, but I'm giving a concept and I don't know if it can be implemented, but within the NYCHA developments now, a community board on a rotating basis have them in the lobbies. I mean, I know this, on election day and on primary day, they have voting machines there. So kind of like this, but much more often. And, because it's serious. I mean, a lot of people, either don't like to or can't travel that far or just more comfortable. If it's more accessible, they might go see a doctor, not just for COVID, but all around medical stuff. Maybe they can catch early diabetes or something, anything.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, David. That's exactly the kind of setup that we had here at Fulton Houses. There was a mobile van. At LHLC, they also had for testing at one point a bus that came in, and they had people come in to do testing. Even at Fulton Houses, about 3 months ago, there was an issue with they couldn't use the building for testing. I'm sorry, for immunization, and they actually had these two large buses roll in, take up space on 9th Avenue right there temporarily for the day or two to do immunizations. So it is.
Well, let me
possible.
ask you that about with the buses. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you find that intimidating versus being inside the building? I mean, I'm talking about doctors. You're talking about actual immunization, but
Right.
like a van or a bus. I mean, do you think that'd be as effective as having them in the building? I don't know. Maybe they would. You live and you deal with this population a lot more than I do. So I'm just asking.
I haven't seen them firsthand because I'm not of female persuasion, but I know there are mammogram buses that go around. And I haven't seen the setup or how it runs, but obviously they're doing mammograms on some of these large buses. So it is, I guess, feasible to an extent.
Right, and they have the equipment. Yeah,
exactly.
And
So
just to sort of chime in a little bit very quickly, there are quite a few these sort of private healthcare providers like Northwell and Lenox Hill and Mount Sinai. They actually have opened up centers, particularly for COVID vaccination and COVID testing. I think there's one on 23rd Street in Chelsea as well. So they are kind of partnering with city, so to speak, to provide the services that otherwise you would have to pay for or you would have to have insurance for. But now these centers are becoming open. Then in terms of vans, there are some which already exist in the city of New York, but they are stationary, meaning they're not floating from one place to the other, but they are assigned particular spots, like in Times Square, near Lincoln Center, somewhere in the Hell's Kitchen, places like that. So that is already happening. But I'm just going to go back to the point that Hector and Leslie were making about NYCHA. And believe it or not, but NYCHA, in the 50s, I'm going back to NYCHA history, when they were actually trying to sell the whole idea of clearing the slums and putting up these new fancy buildings for public housing. One of the arguments was health, and health centers were actually part of design proposals, starting with Harlem River houses and East River houses, and even Chelsea Fulton, actually, believe it or not. The second thing I'm going to say, and Leslie, you're on the spot when it comes to actually utilizing NYCHA as potential sites for healthcare services. Problem NYCHA has is not space. Problem they have, who will fund these programs? So in the community centers, you could actually have these programs. This proposal was made, and I'm gonna, I sound like Forrest Gump right now, but in 2013, we made a whole proposal to NYCHA that they have all these basement spaces, cellar spaces, which are lying vacant. And many of them are potentially convertible to healthcare services. And so the book had us say, find us the money, we will do it. So the problem is, where do you get the funding from? Space is not issue. And last but not the least is NYCHA sites in Harlem and Brownsville and other places. They actually are putting up tents, particularly for COVID vaccination and COVID testing. Only those two. So those are the temporary structures that NYCHA is already sort of making available for healthcare services. But what Hector and Leslie you're talking about is the way it should go. There should be much more permanent space made available, and somehow programmatically needs to be funded by some other agency or some other sort of non-profit group. And because NYCHA has practically no money, as we know.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's something that we all think would be a great idea. Obviously, the issue is funding. But I guess I'm just wondering, like, for next steps for our task force, what should be the next steps? Like, for example, should we actually reach out to the NYCHA housing in our district and say, is this something that you would be interested in us advocating for?
I think, unfortunately, the history with NYCHA, I hate to say, is that, as Ern had mentioned, that there's no money for it. Okay, so we have to figure out a way, an angle that they can get the money for it or funding somehow. I think there's three approaches to this. We can try to get the mobile solution going at least until more permanent solution arises. And honestly, the mobile would be nice to get there every week, but I know maybe that's not feasible. But at the least, what I noticed, unfortunately, during the holidays, I spent my holidays COVID positive. And this was after standing for like 3 hours at a testing site here on 23rd Street and 8th Avenue, just to get tested, just to be told that, hey, you're positive. So, you know, I understand what it's like to be on those lines. So unfortunately, I think the solution is to try to get something temporary, maybe at peak times, because during the holidays, especially during peak travel, people tend to levitate to those centers even more, or even prior to school, where testing is required to go to school, there's an uptick in these lines. So you can see it. I mean, the population grows. Right now, you can go, and there's barely a line, you know, at any point during the day. But during the holidays, it was immense, even all the way through after New Year's Eve. So, because people were still traveling or getting ready to go back to school, or they were coming back from vacation, preparing for work, then they were required to show proof that they're, you know, that they were negative.
So let me just make sure I understand, Hector. So when you say one possible solution is like these mobile vans, are you specifically saying mobile vans related to COVID testing?
COVID testing for now, but hopefully on a larger level, you know, on a more broader spectrum for treating other, you know, physicals or
like a mobile urgent care kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You know, on a grander scale, if you can get something like that, but at the least you can get the COVID vans, at least in these areas, to do testing and possibly even immunization. I don't know if that's possible. That's the same thing. Maybe that's asking for too much, but.
No, that's a good idea. Yeah.
And then, you know, I mean, I know there's some areas that have the space to have tents. Unfortunately, we're in Manhattan where space is, you know, not abundant.
Yeah, I would add, along with the mobile vans, some of the NYCHA grounds have, you know, some spaces available where you could actually put up temporary structures, facilities that are quickly erected, and in partnership with some health organization or the other. That could fly because people feel less comfortable going inside the building than they do when it's right off the street and it's out in the open. I'm talking about COVID-related sort of things. So that's another sort of occupying.
I'm sorry, Viren, are you saying that it's still not inside the building? Because I know some people have said, like, we don't want to be standing around outside.
No, I'm talking about the potentially for temporary structures for COVID-related testing and vaccination. The outside temporary structures might work fine because people feel a lot more comfortable doing so rather than going into a NYCHA building or any building for that matter, actually, unless it's a like large high school or something.
Okay.
I mean,
now, Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Katie, sorry, I have another idea. I'm here right now with Chelsea Land Use Committee. I'm working with a fellow from Columbia University, and we're looking at empty office buildings and commercial vacancies. And some of those can be actually put to some good use because, you know, they're sitting there waiting for being occupied, and it might work both ways. You know, it's good for the community. It's good for the property owners as well.
Right.
That's a
If
great
it is a
idea.
temporary.
But I
Because
thought that part of the issue, though, is that we're talking about wanting it actually to be on NYCHA property to make it easily accessible for people. So that would be different. I mean, it might be nearby, but it wouldn't be on NYCHA property. So do we want to prioritize it being on NYCHA property or just?
maybe as an alternative, if there's no space available on NYCHA property, a pop-up within the vicinity of NYCHA property is the next best thing. So as a temporary solution, you do a pop-up. I mean, there are pop-up stores all over the place. So
Yeah. Now,
I mean,
Hector, you had said there were 3 possible solutions, but I only written down one
Yeah.
so far. So
oh,
you said mobile
well,
vans.
mobile vans, well, the tent solution is what Varian came up with.
Oh,
And also, obviously, the more permanent solution, which is to get a space, which is more lengthy and long in coming. But that is the ultimate goal. And not everybody is going to have a redevelopment in the process like RAD, like we're going to be having, and a partner who's willing to do that, because that was a part of, part of the deal is that they have to either use the available space to redevelop and build upon open spaces to either come up with more money for the till, to make it more profitable for the developer and toward the development itself, or in our case, it's Essence and related, where they don't have that issue and they basically want to give back to the community. So that was the most ideal situation. That's one of the reasons we chose them as well, is because they wanted to give back more to the community. And that's one of the ideas they came up with was build centers, which I think is really a great idea. But unfortunately, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, is that something that would be helpful, or you can maybe let us know at some point, like if it would be helpful for us to suggest a letter from the community board about this, like saying, hey, by the way, we understand that this is one of the things that's being considered, and we think it's really important to have there be a medical facility on site.
Sure. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, it to show your support for the idea. I think that'd be grand.
Okay.
And
Mike, I see that your hand is up.
Yeah, just one more comment on the van idea. There is a van that is out there almost all the time for the folks using the Holy Apostles Soup Kitchen. And they've got doctors there who do everything, all right? And you're talking about hundreds of people who come to that place every single day, and they're lined up. They've got to walk right by this place, and they use it, right? But you're talking about hundreds of actually needy people who don't have access to healthcare anywhere else. As to the residents of NYCHA, they do, for the most part, have access to healthcare, right? For the most part, one way or another, right? And I wonder whether it would be used that much, That's the issue with that. And that's why I say only in terms of an emergency situation like this, COVID stuff, would it make sense to have somebody out there. Having people relying on a van for their health care is just it's not tenable, it's just not realistic. I don't think anybody's going to want to use it for that purpose,
Right. I think we were talking that the mobile van would be like a temporary solution, but Mike, are you saying you don't even think that having a permanent site on NYCHA properties? Are you saying that you don't think?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I do think that's people would certainly use that. I mean, they'd use that all the time, right? But as to having a sort of a robust medical solution in a van, I don't think it pays,
Yep. I do know I'm being mindful of the time, and I know we have a couple other things on our agenda. Is there anybody else who wanted to speak to this issue right now?
The only thing I would say is that NYCHA is always one option, but knowing NYCHA's problems and sort of bureaucracy, I think we could count more on health services sector than on NYCHA. So in other words, they exist in our community. They're all over the place. They have potential, and what I'm encouraged by is, for example, my insurance. I have these people with Northwell.edu and Lenox Hill hospital system, right? And the Columbia hospital system and the Mount Sinai hospital system. And actually, as part of one of the studies that we actually conducted at Columbia University, these people actually are capable of providing services. All they're looking for is someone to partially fund it, if not fully fund it. Does that make sense? So in case of emergency, they would like city or state or any nonprofit coming forward and funding portion of it, or providing them space or giving them something in return for the services. I think we might have better luck reaching out to those entities. And I enumerated 3 of them, and all 3 of them actually do exist in our district: Lenox Hill, Mount Sinai, and Northwell. And what I'm saying is that finding the space is the secondary issue. Finding the service providers is the first part. And partnering with them as a community might actually get more legs. And then we can reach out to NYCHA, then we can tap into empty storefronts, for example, or other ways of providing something that could be a lot more permanent. In fact, even the hospitals themselves can provide space. The Greenwich Village Lenox Hill Hospital, they already have COVID testing center, for example, or the flu shot center, right? So our community folks can actually go there and get a free flu shot. People who don't have insurance can manage to do that, right? So I think those partnerships can be much more interesting. NYCHA is just one of the options, but if you put all our eggs in that basket, you know where it's going.
Mm-hmm. So is that, just trying to think through sort of next steps, is that something, Baron, I don't know, like that you could put together some bullet points on as to sort of like a little sort of mini proposal we could then talk about and say, like, how about we do this?
Yeah, what I can do with the people in the room right now, we can put some draft bullet points and then, talking points, so to speak, and then we can circulate them, and then people can comment on it. And before it becomes whatever other kind of document, that's the next step.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be great. Awesome. Okay, good. Then real quickly, I know next on our agenda is, oh, I'm sorry. Actually, Hector, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention before Gail left office, I was actually appointed to the Bellevue Hospital Community Advisory Board. So I haven't had my first meeting yet. So maybe this is something I could approach them on, and open up a dialogue to see, maybe we can get something going, at least in that vein.
Awesome. So, great.
And I'll
get back to you guys on.
All right.
I'm also on the Mount Sinai board, so I can
there you go.
at least reach out and see what
We've got a connected task force.
There you go. Great.
Lovely. Okay, so Viren's going to put together some bullet points and then we can sort of talk it through. Awesome. Great. As you know, the community board application process is open right now. And one of the things we had talked about, even as this task force was being formed, and then last year when the application process was open, was that while technically the community board itself has nothing to do with the application process, it's done through the borough president's office, that it would be nice to reach out and encourage people in our community to apply, and specifically to try and encourage a diverse group of people in our community to apply. One thing we had talked about last year, I don't know if you remember, is we'd said like, hey, can we all think of, let's all commit to individually reaching out to at least 3 people that we know to apply. And I was thinking, frankly, maybe it would be nice if we send a note to Jesse tomorrow to say like, this is something that should be mentioned at our full board meeting. I mean, he does say like, oh, by the way, the application process is open, but maybe we could encourage every one of our current members to reach out to 3 people or something to apply and to really try and focus on having diverse applicants as well. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, just a quick note on that. Last year, Jesse did a pretty good job actually, because we were all sort of because of COVID and all that. Everyone was stuck at home. He actually sent out emails to NYCHA community centers, when the community centers program providers, not the NYCHA people, but folks who actually run the programs. And he sent out flyers to them, which were printed and put up in different community centers. And I do remember that. And I think he also sent out a printable flyer PDF to all community board members to forward to any organization that they know of. And I think we can just ask him to repeat that effort, because I think he did a pretty good job, it seems like, because we did see a kind of change in number of new folks that became part of the community board 4. So I think there was some increase in terms of.
Great, yeah. And in fact, yeah, I helped come up with helped design that crazy flyer.
You did, yes.
Did a great job.
All right, thank you. And let me just be super clear. I'm not the one who did the graphics. That is not in my wheelhouse, but I did have people who could help. But you're right. I think updating that flyer and then getting it out. But yes, let's ask him to redo all of that. And obviously I can.
So Jesse did that. And then I think Gail Brewer's office did that. So I think through Jesse, we can request Borough President's office to continue what they do. I mean, I think they typically do it. We just have to sort of,
Yeah, but I do think it would also be good for there to be a mention on the full board call, like, hey, this is something we should all be thinking about doing, right? And reaching out to folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, all right.
I think we have a kind of some sort of a little email that we sent out last year. And that include number of places. So there was community centers for NYCHA, there was sort of other sort of community facilities in the neighborhood, which are non-NYCHA community facilities, religious locations like churches, which have community programs, Link NYC kiosks.
Yes, yep, we talked about that.
Yeah, so there was a whole list. I think I'll see if I can dig it up and we can recycle the email again.
Perfect, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's not forget to add. I mean, it's probably maybe on the list that Aaron has, but you have organizations like the Highline and also
Hudson Guild.
Hudson Guild. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Good. Great. All right. All right. Next on the agenda, let me pull it up again real fast. So next month, as we know, is Black History Month. And you may recall that last year, we actually invited a couple of speakers to come in and address, talk about a person who had lived in our community, a Black activist who'd done some phenomenal things, right? And just gave a little bit of history about that. And then we also talked about a location that was sort of well-known, sort of in the context of Black history. So I assume we want to do the same thing again this year. I think it was a sort of a great thing to start. And I just wanted to see if anybody had any ideas about who we might want to invite or any historical figures that we might want to highlight next month. Thoughts? Or if you can give it some thought and then pop us an email. Yeah.
What we do is we just again we do this email thing again because folks who are not here also might have some suggestions.
True.
So
yep.
Let's send out an email and we invite names and suggestions.
Great.
Or I have a few, but I want to hear other people's thoughts.
Yep. Yep. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Also remember that we will be competing for people's time because it's the month where many of these folks are going to be in demand.
Yeah.
as speakers I'm talking about. So,
Yeah. Which is why we're trying to plan it a little bit ahead this year, because last year I think we're asking like the week beforehand. I mean, it works out well, but it would be nice if we planned ahead a little bit.
Yeah, and ideally somebody from the, sorry, I was just saying, ideally somebody from the community would be fantastic, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, yeah, what we had last year, which was great. Another thought that I had in connection with this, but I don't know if there are the resources, frankly, in our community office, but like, I thought it would be really great just on our website if we could have just a list of things that are happening in our district in celebration of Black History Month. Like, are there things happening at the library, or are there different speakers happening, or?
Actually, Katie, that actually Jesse actually does that. He already has two things he does. One is it gets put up on MCB4's website, and then he also has an e-blast newsletter.
But specific to Black History Month?
No, it's everything together, but it's always, there's a section where whatever is sort of, so we can ask him to include specifically for this. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm talking about is, I mean, I know we circulate out a lot of information, but I think it would be great actually if we had on our website and the newsletter too, if we want, but on our website, like if you want to know specifically what's going on for Black History Month, go look there. I think that could be a great resource for our community members. What were you going to say, David?
I was wondering if, and I got interrupted in the beginning part of the conversation, but something, so I apologize.
No worries.
If we can have someone like, Crane's list, like the 50 most powerful women, they might have something like the 50 most powerful African Americans. And if somebody in our community happens to be on that list, I don't know if they do, I don't know if they have for that, but I mean, maybe we can have them featured or speak or something. I mean, because I mean, I always feel bad that we separate, Black History Month. I mean, I always believe it should be part of it, which it is, but I mean, I always believe it should be more included into the genre of American history, just, more inclusive, not this separate. But unfortunately, the way society is, they separated. But yeah, if somebody in our community is of stature, or someone maybe, if we can't find someone present, maybe someone historical, like A. Philip Randolph from the Railroad Workers Union, he actually lived in Penn South at the very end of his life. So people like that, or we can discuss the, I think it was the Gibbon or Gribben house on 20, which was an Underground Railroad, maybe,
29th Street.
Yeah, so maybe we could do something like that, a hybrid of current and historical.
Yeah,
but
actually, we did talk about an Underground Railroad location last year. Yeah, that's exactly what we did. Yeah.
But I mean, but maybe we could discuss, hey, Philip Randolph, how it affects, because he was very involved with the March on Washington. He also was able to get African Americans into the military because he threatened to march in 1941, and he spooked Roosevelt to be more inclusive. And also unions, which affects everyone, but he was also a union person.
Yeah, great. And we said that we were going to send out an email to all of our task force members asking for names and suggestions. So those are great ones to add to our list. Great. Hector, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I wanted to offer an idea possibly moving forward. Maybe in the future, maybe in the coming year, when we have a holiday similar to like Chinese New Year or something like that, not everybody kind of grasps what these holidays signify, whether it be Kwanzaa or Chinese, or Rosh Hashanah, if I'm sorry, I'm not saying correctly. But maybe we can have a guest or someone come in and speak, briefly on the significance of these holidays and what they mean to the different ethnicities. That way we create a more all-inclusive environment.
Informed.
Exactly, and educate folks, and since we have a captive audience here for a little while.
Yeah, unfortunately, Lunar New Year is happening before our next meeting, so we won't be able to address that one.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that could be a good idea. Yeah, thanks. Let's see, hold on, let me just check again real quickly. Oh, actually, and then I think we are just about done. So it was just, the last thing on our agenda is ideas and topics for our next task force meeting. And it sounds like, so we'll have, obviously, hopefully we'll have speakers addressing Black History Month. We may be able to have some follow-up to what we had just started discussing. And you had said you were going to put together some ideas, Viren, and send them out about what we might be able to sort of support or ask for in connection with healthcare solutions at NYCHA. And let's see what else here. And then hopefully I'll have some more information about the education stuff that I'm going to look into to find out the schools in our district, whether or not they have social service workers, and what the details are about their after-school programs, so that we can think about equity there. Does anybody have any other suggestions for our agenda next month? Micah, I saw your hand up first.
Yeah, you know, we heard someone from the DA's office last night.
Yep.
Right. Which
and we're
is
going to be hearing from them tomorrow night from the DA.
Exactly. It was fascinating. It was nice to hear. And I went back and I looked and sort of fact checked, you know, what both of us were saying to each other. But it was great. And, you know, in the course of the years that I've been on this board, it is rare to see somebody coming from the mayor's office. Right? Much in the same vein as what we saw last night, or from the police department. Right? I would love to hear somebody from the police department addressing all of these new proposals, you know, that the mayor's brought up. Right? We've got a new, happens to be a Black police commissioner, right? Somebody representing her. I'd like to hear what she has to say, because she's got her feet in both camps, so to speak, right? She's got to look out for public safety. She's also got to look out for keeping people safe from the police, her own people, right?
So you're saying you'd like to hear somebody from the police department react to the mayor's initiatives? Is that it?
Yeah. And what the police department's own approach is going to be, you know? It's all about fighting crime, but let's hear either overall ideas. And this is in a more congenial atmosphere, I think, and that's how we invite them. Then you know, these public, these press conferences and all that business. So coming to us is good rehearsal, more or less, right?
Are you suggesting we invite the chief of police, or?
Oh no, I don't think she would come, but somebody right under her, just like, you know what I'm saying? Just like the chief EDA.
Yeah, we could probably think about someone from the neighborhood council side.
No. Farther up the line,
Further
here,
up.
a chief of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, let me look into that. I should also mention, by the way,
Can I
sorry,
make a suggestion on that? You would contact their Office of Public Information. They have a Bureau of Public Information, and that's who you would contact to have someone speak. I forget Miller. I forget his first name. He's actually
Jonathan
speaker.
Miller. Jonathan.
I actually heard him speak a few times, and he's a wonderful speaker. If we can get him, he might be a little too high up the food chain, but he would be a great speaker. But you got to remember, they also have to toe the party line, so to speak.
Yeah,
They
very
can't
much
really,
so. Yeah.
they can't veer off.
Yeah.
So if you ask them a controversial question, they're going to have to give you a very, you know, non-controversial answer. I mean, like I always ask them about, you know, it's a bad look when cop cars are parked in bike lanes or parked illegally, you know, somewhere, and they're not really doing it. It's just a bad optics, or they're parking around the precinct. And there's nothing they can do. I mean, they come up with great excuses, but their hands are tied.
Yeah. Sorry, before I'll jump to you, Hector, in just a second. One of my ideas actually for tonight, but I didn't have the idea until late last week, so we didn't give them enough notice. I would actually like to invite somebody from Manhattan Borough President Levine's office to come speak, because when he presented to full board, when Levine himself presented to full board last month, he talked about that equity was going to be one of his 3 themes this year. And I thought it would be really interesting and helpful to us to understand sort of what the focus is going to be of his office and how we may be able to help advance some of those equity agenda items in our district. So I thought it would be helpful to have a presentation about that. So I am hoping that maybe for our next meeting that we can have somebody from his office come speak to us about his equity platform. And Hector, I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I would tweak that request a little bit in the sense that you don't want to hear what you already heard. So basically, what is on that platform, or what programmatically he can offer for this particular district from that point of view. What I'm trying to say, let's just frame it so it becomes more meaningful rather than just a kind of overarching ambitious plan as to I mean equity and I want equity for everybody, which is what the political speech is all about. But what about it that's going to affect this community, and what are the sort of concrete programs that you're planning to propose? I think we need to frame the question. I like the idea of inviting them, but let's frame 1 or 2 questions for them so we actually, direct the conversation.
Target it to the district.
Exactly.
And he did specifically, he talked about equity in healthcare, equity in education, equity in criminal justice, equity in employment. But you're right, but like to hear, you're saying, let's ask them to present how it would impact our district. Sounds like. Is that it? Oh.
Sorry about that. No, more than how it will impact our district, what are the concrete programs? Basically show us what it is. What is it, what program you actually are thinking of putting in place that would bring about that change? Because the ambition is always great to hear about.
Right.
The actual actionable steps.
Right.
I think that's something that we can hear more about from him or his office. That would be very helpful.
No, we don't want to make it so specific. Then we say, well, we want to know specifically what the timing is and everything. And he'll be like, okay, I'll get back to you in 6 months, right? Like they've only been in the office a few weeks now, so we need to have something in between. But yeah,
I already talked to you. What are you bothering me for?
No, and again, we're not asking him. We're asking for somebody from his office who can speak to,
Yeah, I know. So that's why we got to be specific and say, look, this is just an add-on to what you already told us. That's all.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. And Hector, what were you going to say?
You know what? This may be a little redundant because you're already going to hopefully get a representative from the police department to speak on some of the issues. But about the end of last year, a few of the community board 4 members, including David and Alice, took part in the Port Authority Police Department Civilians Police Academy. It was several weeks training to see their operations and how they operate. It was pretty informative. And I think it would be nice to get a representative from there to either maybe speak at one of these meetings about the program. It's still, we were the first group to be, it's the first time they're doing it. So we were the first group to go through to see, work out the kinks, so to speak. And I know the NYPD also has a similar program that I went through several years ago. And I think it's a worthwhile program to get somebody from representatives from each of these programs to come and speak and find out how folks can get more involved and volunteer for these programs. I mean, it's very time consuming, but it's worthwhile, very educational, and community leaders get an insight into the operations of these police departments and what they do and why they do it, and the laws and regulations behind the activities they take part in. And we as community leaders can bring this back to our community and explain and try to enlighten people on, why operations, we see a lot of bad press about the NYPD or any police departments on TV, but sometimes there's a lot more to it than just what you see in the news. And if
Often.
we can find, we get a little more education out there, I think go a long way.
So Hector, could you send us some more, the names of the programs or some details, just so we would even know how to reach out to find if somebody could come speak to us about it?
Sure. I can try to, I can get the Port Authority and I'll work on getting the NYPD one as well.
That would be awesome. Okay, thanks.
Just a little FYO, Hector, I don't know if you, FYI, I don't know if you know, I was speaking to one of the officers, he was in charge of the diversity to try to bring in more people of color into the Port Authority police. I don't know how far he's gotten, but I can't remember the fellow's name, but I spoke with him offline. So because it's pretty much, especially if you look at the old pictures, it's totally non-diverse. It's gotten more diverse now, but back in the day and even the recent past, it was not diverse at all. But we should try to maybe get some people in our community that live in Nitro to try to apply for the Port Authority.
And one last issue that we heard about some sort of near the end of last year was, and I don't know how we can sort of follow up about this, but is the idea of more foot patrols by the police, right? We'd heard from a couple different folks about how they'd like to see, and I guess you were referencing this briefly too earlier, David, about cops out of cars and doing more foot patrol, and maybe we could get a pilot or something in our district. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's terribly helpful to be talking to the individual precincts and saying, oh, we'd love foot patrol, because they just sort of aren't set up to, I think, to make those decisions at the moment, and that's not, I think, supported from on high. I think what we need to do maybe differently is to see if we can pull together, well, first, figure out a way if we can show that our community really is interested in having more foot patrols. And maybe we could also do some research about other areas that have had foot patrols, and there's, better community relations, or, you know what I mean? Like sort of show the benefits of foot patrols, and maybe we could see if we could get a pilot. I don't know if that's something that you guys think would be interesting, but that is certainly something we heard from some people about at the end of last year.
Well, the mayor's on board with you on that. One of his recent press conferences, he said, I don't need 10 cops coming to me when I'm at an event. I need you in Bronzeville and East New York in the communities. And they're trying to reduce police at the desks and to be out on foot patrol. So the mayor is a big advocate of foot.
Well, I think there's a little bit of a difference between not being at a desk and being on foot patrol, because, what we heard from some of the precincts was like, well, absolutely, we're out there, but we can get to places faster if we're in our cars. So we don't want to reduce the fastness of our response. So we need to be in cars and not on foot patrol.
And they also have the second problem that they have a reduced number of cops in the force. I think it's what they said, 25% or something. So they are short staffed. That's one argument, that this has to be something that is a resource question.
Right.
Not just the desire alone, that yes, we would like to do it, but give us the manpower to do it.
And I think, exactly, but I think there are probably facts to be argued on both sides there. And I think we have to pull together some of those facts. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think what he was saying was like when he goes to parades, he doesn't need to see 10 cops standing around. There must be foot patrols already, like by Times Square, which is part of our seat community board district. And I've seen them, with the towers on 8th Avenue, with the lights. I mean, that's intimidating on like 38th Street.
No, we're not talking about more police, like,
you're talking about a patrolman where the people would know who he is and he would know who's who and all that on the streets. I guess in this bureaucratic world, it would be hard to do, but maybe, you never know. I mean, That's actually, maybe we could. I mean, that would. I do
Okay.
believe the mayor is for that too, but who knows if it'll be coming to action.
I've heard, yeah, I'm sorry. I've heard on the other side of the coin that even from some of the officers, they've gotten pushback on these foot patrols because of the optics, supposedly, which I think is kind of ridiculous because back in the day, we had the beat cops, you know, walking around and doing what they're supposed to be doing rather than be in a vehicle. Basically, the optics is that, hey, if we have too many cops in an ethnic neighborhood like NYCHA or some vicinity like that, it makes it look like we're trying to lock down and police those areas. And, you know, we get pushed. And I think it's a bunch of nonsense, to be honest with you. But we really need to combat that kind of, opinion because it's
Yeah, but I think that
ridiculous.
that could be a role that we play is to say, actually, you know, maybe we can do a survey, but like our community wouldn't react like, oh, you know, we're feeling.
Katie, I'm going to suggest something. I think there are two schools of thought, right? But I'll give you sort of my own personal response. When I'm coming out of the train station, I see suddenly 10 cops hanging around at the street corner. I assume right away that there's something wrong, right? And so there is that kind of perception as well. But if we want to make a request very specific and say at the school, start of the school and
Exactly, that's what I was thinking instead of school
we
stuff.
want
Yeah.
police presence around the subways and around the schools or in particular locations, geographically sort of, you know, very well considered. I think that could be that could get some more leg because there's also the counter argument to this as well, which Hector was talking about, that police tend to not to be very friendly, you know, and we want community police relations, but they want to sort of hold back because they don't want to appear to be very pally in the neighborhood because they want to keep that distance. And it's easier for them when they're behind the wheel, you know, in their cars than it is when they're actually walking around. I mean, I live on a police precinct block, and trust me, every time I pass by, I nod, they nod, and we say, we don't exactly break into a conversation every now and then, because that's how they prefer it, and we understand that. So there's a kind of unwritten sort of protocol of how you interact with cops.
Yeah, and just so we're being clear, we're not talking about having 10 people in a group anywhere. We're talking about 2 people walking around. You know what I mean? Like, so, but yes, but specifically, this did come up when people were talking about some of the concerns in connection with schools, you know, coming and going. So maybe that would be a great way to say, like, that's how we want to start it. Like, can there be more? Can there be people out, you know, not on a corner standing there, but just having a walking beat, you know, during
schools, subways, certain public spaces where you feel that there's a kind of perception about the place itself because of the geography of it or the geometry of it or whatever have you.
So it's just something for us to think about, like how we might be able to approach this. Mike, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just in passing, let me tell you, there used to be a program where when the police academy graduates were finally, you know, let loose, right? They'd be taken in a group in a van and deposited somewhere, you know, and they'd all walk around. They'd get to know a neighborhood, and folks would see them, and they're young people, and it was a good thing, you know. Everybody was, you know, excited at that point. These guys have a new job, and the community saw, well, God, we're going to have all these new people here. And I often wonder, you know, why did that stop? What made that end, right? What made it end? So, I mean, that's something that I'd like to see again. And then here's another thing, you know, I always talk about the Citizen app, you know, and how it can really make you nervous. Every 2 seconds, there's something happening right next to you, right in front of your, oh my God. Well, the funny thing about it is, you know, I see these notifications. Oh, somebody's stuck in the elevator. There's smoke here. There's whatever. There's a car turned over. The other night, there's an emergency services truck right outside the window, right next to me. Ambulances, cop cars. There must have been 30 cops standing out there for an hour or more. Not once was there a notification on the Citizen app. You know, so what that tells me is there's even more stuff to worry about. You know? I mean, if something like that didn't show up, and I didn't see it on the news, I didn't see it in the paper, I never found out what that was all about. Crazy, right?
If I
So
could just make
anyway,
yeah, Mike, if I could just make a quick comment on that.
yeah,
One of the things I found out after speaking to some officers is that they don't report this to the Citizens app. They only do like major happenings. Maybe that should have been one of them. I don't know.
oh yeah, well, the cops
But
don't do, these are citizens, the
yeah,
cops,
exactly. So citizen
Right.
needs to report that, obviously, so it won't appear on your app. So
Right.
maybe you could have reported it.
Oh, I was tempted to, but I didn't know what to, I felt
Gotcha.
self-conscious about it.
Gotcha.
And it's, so many times I've reported guys shootings right outside my window, 2 in a row, 2 shootings right in front of me.
Mm.
And it causes a lot of stress within the household. You got people knocking on the door. They want to interview you. My son is freaking out. We've got all these cops coming in. So I don't do that anymore, and I'm hesitant to do citizen as well. Anyway.
Yeah, Mike, I think it's a very interesting point, because I just occurred to me while you were speaking. I teach 2 universities, Columbia University and City College.
Yeah.
And somehow their security system and alert system has a way of reporting this fairly quickly. Even before you hear it on the news.
Exactly.
Yeah, they say 116th Street and such and such avenue, active shooter or whatever.
Exactly.
There's a burglary.
Exactly. Yeah.
There is a
And
mechanism
so
in place, and I don't know how they can make it much more.
it's amazing. No, a couple of times I've said to my son, oh, he's about to walk out the door, literally walk out the door. And I say, no, there's a shooting incident right in front of our door. Or there's somebody shooting at the building right in front of our door. So I tell you, in those two, and plus you see guys walking around with a gun, guys with a knife, all kinds of things. And it's a sad, sad thing how many incidents there are of women being assaulted. Women being assaulted. It is a heartbreaking, when I see those things, I say to myself, man, I'm happy I don't have a daughter. I'm happy I don't have it, right? Hector, I sympathize. You must worry
I hear
your
you,
little
Mike.
girl.
I have a girl, and
I know.
I worry about that all the time. My son as well, when he's here, I worry about that. And yeah, I get the alerts, and I wonder about that.
Jeez.
But honestly, just to speak earlier on what you mentioned about, I understand how you feel, the frustration and the fear and the headaches that come from making that call. But honestly, I know we have to make the call, because honestly, call 911, report what you see.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
And I get where you're coming from. I do, because there are times where, man, I don't want to deal with these 911 operators sometimes.
I'm just saying it, Hector. I'm just saying it. It ain't gonna happen, probably. When the moment arrives, it's like, oh,
right. But I do have to say, remember this, Mike, and anybody else who's listening. Citizens app is reported mostly by citizens. Okay.
Yeah.
So some of those reports, even the police officers I've spoken to, I said, hey, there's a stabbing reported on such and such a day, and they said we have no such report on that. Okay. So there's some falsehoods being spread out as well. You can't.
Oh, yeah.
You have to take it with a grain of salt, obviously.
100%.
And confirm it.
Right.
So don't get so crazy. I get like that too. I feel it myself when I see these reports come in. Take it with a grain of salt and just do your own homework and just keep your family safe. That's the best you can do.
Well, if there's a video on the video tells a different story.
That's different. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. So I'm mindful of the time. Thank you, everybody. I think we made some good progress this evening. That was a great presentation we heard earlier. And I'm going to see you all tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night?
Wait. Oh, no, sorry. A week from tomorrow. Gosh,
okay.
I'm already. Yeah, exactly. Next Wednesday.
Okay.
To drop off my couch. Like another
You're right. A week from tomorrow night. I'm losing my mind. Okay. Then all of you have a good week, and I will see you next Wednesday.
Okay,
all right.
bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.